All right, guys, how are we today? I started a video with a completely different vibe, and then as well, like always, I clicked and I was like, while I'm talking about something beyond me, where I'm trying to like gather words from somewhere, I start fidgeting, and I was cleaning the mouse pad while I was talking to you, and what happened is I clicked on the stop recording button because I wasn't aware enough for me to kind of move the mouse after I clicked yes. It's happened a couple of times over the past like month or so, but ultimately now I am fully conscious about how frustrating it is to do that. But, anyways, one beautiful thing happened today, which is the complicated way I was building my website is done. So, today I'm going to talk about code and not actually code, the technical stuff is going to start happening next week, I'm hoping. But not technical stuff when it comes to my code, the technical stuff, period, about like the website that I'm building, like the groove, and the whole like what am I trying to do and how am I trying to do it. A bit more of an explanation. I'm going to use you guys the same way all people that are right now teachers and like have these courses online. I'm going to use you guys in order to be able to explain the concepts that I'm trying to build on because ultimately programming is all about concepts. Now there are two concepts in programming that like struck a nerve. Once I figured out the difference, I the whole approach to anything I'm building split in two, which was very much a necessity because like we don't understand how much we don't know until we can actually compartmentalize them. There's as much as I would love to say feel, you can only feel something once you actually like understand what the hell is going on. Other than that, it's just an awkward feeling. And I don't know if it's in our nature to label things or in our nature to kind of like give space between us and those things for us to be able to observe them objectively. I think that would be better for us to have as a nature. But what I want to discuss is error versus problem. There's a difference between error and a problem. And if we refer to programming or coding or like software engineering or development or architecture or any form of construction, the error is a fundamental flaw in what I'm trying to do. These cats can't play with themselves properly. But error is a fundamental flaw of what you're trying to do. And so let me explain it the best way possible. If I am doing something that won't go anywhere, the computer will yell at me and be like, "What do you do?" Hey man, it will show me all red. In real life, an error is basically attempting to use water instead of like blocks to construct a building. Hey, fuck it. Attempting to use sand instead of blocks. That is an error of an approach. You can't do that. In the English language, I could create words, but it will create an error for the people that are actually listening to me because what they know are the words that has been approved of or agreed on or whatever. So created words are going to be erroneous, whilst a problem is a, I don't want to say a flaw, but something that has been missed. Could be missed intentionally because we're being negligent, or it could be missed just because people are kind of like, I don't know, we rushed into something, we didn't give it enough time, whatever it is. But a problem is basically building a wall but not building it straight enough. Building a wall but building it shorter, right? Now, all of these are significant problems, but they're not an error because you still get a house after you're done. Whilst if you build a house using sand, you'll never get the house. There's a complete error from the beginning. But a problem is basically making a mistake while you're doing something. And if I were to translate it to code, if I'm writing and what I'm telling the computer, I'm telling the computer in the syntax, the actual like language, which it could understand. And programming is effectively being able to use multiple languages to discuss with multiple pieces of the actual computer. Or that, I don't want to say computer, but everything that computes has its own language. Like a computer in front of you has like a couple of different languages that it uses. But then there's like a separate parts of it that as well like use different languages because like there are, if you want to access the internet, you're gonna have to kind of speak the language of the internet or the browser's language, which is basically JavaScript. You can use PHP, but then you kind of have to like in order to see what you're doing, you have to use HTML and styling language. There's only one that I know. I don't know. There's probably more, but there's CSS, cascading style sheets. But then if I want to talk to a database, I have to use SQL. But to actually send the message from the browser to the database, I have to use a different language, which is probably going to be PHP, Java, or something like this. All of these are different kinds of languages that serve different purposes in between the communication of like these two things. Now, if I actually make a mistake in the language, it's an error. And the whole, nothing moves. The entire like program that I'm trying to build, the entire website, the software that I'm trying to build doesn't go anywhere fast. It literally starts sparkling red and going, hey man, what are you trying to do? And that's literally it. Whilst an error, sorry man, a problem slash a bug is a funny story because the original like bug was literally a moth because back then in the I think in the early 1400s or 1950s, sorry, uh, computers were and transfer of data happened through light bulbs because data is transferred through circuits. It's electrical pulses traveling from like different nodes, and every time it passes like a certain sequence, it signals a certain data. And back then it was stored in cards. So there was a big issue because everything was moving normally, but the problem is the data that was being received was wrong, and it's because like one of the light bulbs was burnt, and the reason it was burnt because a moth stuck to it. So what happened is like the actual circuit never actually completed its rotation afterwards because it stopped there, and the output was exactly like was what was with the information that it stopped at that point, which was a bug because it was bad information coming out instead of the information they wanted. So there was a problem. So a problem is when you actually like tell the computer to do something correctly, but you tell it to do the wrong thing. And so what effectively you're doing is you're looking at the computer and going like, this is what I want. But when you write it down, you're not articulating it enough. You're not articulating it right. You're not articulating it correctly. So the computer is doing its thing the best way it can do. How you could the best way it can do it. And what it's effectively doing is it's taking steps and steps and steps and steps in order to fulfill the requirements that you layer for the computer, because that's what files and folders are. And you literally go to that file and bring me this information and use it to do this, and the computer does that, and then it gives you an output. And when you look at it and you go like, that's not what I want, it's not the computer's fault. With the computer, it's very meticulous. It does things exactly how it's told to do, and it's been programmed to do things exactly how it's told to do. So the software that you're working on has worked with everyone else, but it's not working for you. It's not the software's fault. It's probably yours. So you're telling the computer to do the wrong thing. So that is basically a problem or a bug that you have created. But the error is not in a computer, because the computer errors when you give it the wrong language, or when you write it in the wrong, when you kind of like use syntax in the wrong way. But it's an error on your part that's creating the problem with the computer. So here, if we are to reflect on how we make decisions and what we do decisions, we're always making them under the assumption that we know what we're talking about or what we're doing or what we want. And I think that's where like the biggest form of, well, we kind of like, this is where we make errors as human beings. Most of the time when it comes to people, there are books about how to deal with people, yet all the people that read these books still make similar errors. It's like we can't get away from them, and mainly because we jump to a certain conclusion, or we rush into something, or we familiarize ourselves with a certain thing to a point where we're confident in everything pertaining it, and we kind of like don't notice the details that every situation requires, because every situation has its own kind of like syntax that in order for it not to error, and also has its own dialect and articulation in order for it not to cause a problem or cause a bug. And it's funny because like the first time I actually read error versus problem, I don't remember what I was actually like reading for it to be the case. But I figured, man, it would be a good thing to actually make a video on it. So summarizing in a simpler way, what I extract out of this rant is the fact that every situation requires certain syntax in order for us to be able to kind of like deal with it, to express truthfully or honestly or whatever it is we want to express within the situation. And then the way we express it, in order for it not to result in a problem or in a buggy result, right? It's buggy, they say buggy code, a buggy result. And the best way to do that is to be able to kind of like, I want to say like review our work or basically go through the code over and over again. But ultimately, when you're writing syntax, you need to articulate very well what exactly do you want out of it. And as you do that, you're practically relieving yourself of the stress of having a different random output later on. Because if that's the case, then we all know if a situation doesn't really go according to plan, we're going to have to go back to it. Or the next time we have an issue or we have a situation similar, we have to restart from scratch to figure out what's going on, right or wrong. So might as well give it the attention it needs and articulate exactly what we expect out of it. That's it. Why the fuck not? Yay, thank you.